response video to Ante Contavad. Reload his video. What the hell?
Much of the thrust of my previous few videos has been along the lines of just how ignorant are we? In other words, I think we all understand that our knowledge has limitations, but I would sort of expand on that and say, how ignorant are we? How much...
Right. Yeah, well, we've sort of been over this and over this and over this, so let's do it again. Look, we can look at the history, recorded history. We can see that we incrementally dissected the world, come to observations, and through experimentation, we found the elements that make up the universe. We discovered the telescope. We looked into space. We discovered the microscope. We looked into the smaller spaces. We found methods to stain things and to understand how they work, to understand the mechanics of the chemistry. We're still unraveling some of that. We've done the human genome thing. So we can see this incremental growth. But we can also see that Shakespeare is still relevant. That the dynamic of the animal, the psychology, since Freud and beyond, right? I mean, we've also done that. And then Darwin. Yeah, combined like Darwin and Freud are Darwin and even physical dynamics. And, understanding architecture and understanding weight loads and all this other kind of stuff. And you can sort of start to see what this is. It's a structure. That we're these biological organisms. We can deduce abiogenesis. I mean, do you really argue with that all the evidence points just directly, just straight at the fact that there was a first DNA molecule on this planet, a first replicator, and that it grew into everything we know as the complex chemistry on the surface of this planet, that biology has produced all the fanciness that exists here, that the planet would be Mars or Venus, something in between even, without life. It would still be a planet of rocks and elements and compounds. Yeah, so I mean, we're back to this context thing, and so you're saying that we can't know what we don't know, but we can sort of, because we can know that human beings have been asking these fundamental questions about their existence for thousands of years, and that now we have answered a lot of those fundamental questions. The big ones, what's it all mean, or some other kind of crap. Okay, we're still struggling a little bit with that. But I think we now have the evidence to say, well, we know it doesn't mean anything. It means a DNA molecule replicated because of a property of its chemistry, and that through that process it created this competitive battle where the chemistry was funneled, was forced to conform to this process of change that would make it into mechanisms that would be survivable in a battle. And that's where we've acquired all our tools. That's where all our senses came from. That's where our consciousness came from. That's where our intelligence came from, was this competitive war of attrition, and where only the modified survived, only the something with a thicker skin or a sharper tooth or a finer eye or a better sense of smell or whatever the thing would be, an adaptation that made it capable of exploiting an environment that nothing else could exploit. Yeah, and you're saying there's more. And I guess what I would say is that even Shakespeare, with all his imagination, couldn't come up with more. He didn't write science fiction because I think he knew there's nowhere to take this basic structure. This basic psychology doesn't transfer anywhere. It's always going to be just a need machine. just a silly thing to entertain. And you can entertain it with, we see the variety of human beings. You can entertain them with potato chips, one of my favorites, and some sex, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and they're entertained. Some people need a big screen TV. Some people just need some nice music. Little different things that soothe the beast. But that's all there is here. There's just beast to be soothed. There's nothing else happening. There's no bigger truth. We're just biological organisms now too intelligent to play what was a really, really dumb game.
Do we not know that is something that would completely alter the way that we now think?
Right. Now that's one of the things here, right? So with all our imagination, can anybody come up with any realistic of those? Alice in Wonderland? No, not too realistic. Star Wars? Not too realistic. Right? We're not going to find, there's not going to be alien bars out in space. There's no Deep Space Nine. There's Deep Space, forget about it. There's nothing out there. There's nothing making noise. There's nothing talking. There's nothing. There's just nothing. There's no bigger truth here. And if we found another alien civilization, they'd be doing the same thing we're doing. They're just going to say, have you figured out chocolate-covered potato chips yet?
If we did know it. In other words, how ignorant are we? In what degree of darkness or light are we?
Yeah. Well, so like I said, I think we can deduce some of that. We can look back at the past and we can see how much we've gained and how much knowledge we have acquired, and we can see that all the new knowledge is just details. There hasn't been a big truth since Darwin. There hasn't been and even Darwin was just somebody who made the truth more provable. It's like people have been speculating about that for hundreds of years. Where we came from and the possibility that it is all just a seed. But go on. Yeah, go on.
Well, again, I hate to say this, but in my opinion, we don't know. We don't know whether or not we're relatively ignorant or relatively smart.
Well, relativity again. This is going to be an absolute statement. It's not really, there's nothing, what, you're going to compare it to some other thing? Some other alien shows up and, he knows double calculus and that's somehow going to mean something? I'm just saying, I think we can make absolute statements. We've sit there and picked at this life thing, and there's nothing to be revealed except the head game. That's all that we don't know. It's not even that we don't know it. Obviously we don't know the exact mechanics of the brain, but I'm saying we do know the function of it. We do know why this psychology exists and the patterns it produces. We know why that we feel the emotions we feel, why we desire the things we desire. All those things have been explained. There's no truth to be revealed here. There just isn't. It'd be nice to have a diagram of the end of the universe and what the hell nothing would be like forever, or what exactly the structure of the universe is. Maybe this whole universe is just a crack in the perfect glass of eternal nothing. Who knows? But I don't think it's relevant to, once you've established that abiogenesis thing, once you've established this is just a property of chemistry in a complex arrangement, that it does this whirlpool thing of natural selection, and the whirlpool produces a little point of complexity, that it drives matter into a complex form through this device of this competitive arena, through this blueprint molecule. But it isn't something the universe is doing on purpose. It's just a property that just happens to be possible because of the circumstances. And as far as we know, and as far as we can prove, it only happened once.
The people that say that we've sort of gone beyond reasonable doubt in terms of what we know
Right, so that's my line, right? So you could just use my name. I mean, I'm so sick of everybody just talking. Pierrot talks about people who tell him the thermostats. Well, why don't you use names here? I mean, why don't you be a little more direct in your conversation? Who are you talking to? How many people are you talking to? You know, people keep implying like there's this whole group or this whole. No, it's just one asshole. So why don't you just deal with your one asshole and don't pretend the rest of us are on that team? But anyway, that's a side issue. Yeah, but isn't that the truth of it, right? Let's come up with let's apply our capacity to imagine. And that's part of reasonable doubt, even in like a criminal case. Part of reasonable doubt is I can't come up with a reasonable way that this guy's innocent. You know, I can't come up with some sort of reasonable, the aliens did it, or somebody else disguised themselves as him and then got fake fingerprints and fake blood and took a fake shit on her, you know, stored his shit and then put his shit on top of her dead body. No, that's not, none of that makes any sense. I'm just saying, here we are sitting here, and can you come up with some sort of reasonable speculation about what the magical truth is? Well, it's certainly not going to be a creator. It's not going to be an intelligence. Nothing intelligent would sit there and grind this mill. I mean, so you're stuck with just, no, it's a dumb universe doing dumb shit. It's crude, unsophisticated. And here we're stuck, here we are, sophisticated and elegant, and we're stuck in this slop. And that's just the truth of it. We're stuck playing a game way too dumb for our better intelligence.
I would say that, think that we've more or less figured this whole thing out, or at least figured out enough to make very sweeping generalizations.
Well, very sweeping. They're not generalizations. They're just statements about what the structure, the frame that we exist in. I'm just saying that once you've established that it is just pretty much beyond reasonable doubt, abiogenesis, chemical properties, it's beyond reasonable doubt. 3.5 billion years of natural selection, honing tools that make organisms equipped to survive in a gladiator war. And that over those 3.5 billion years, the gladiators would start to get pretty sophisticated and complex, because it's a lot easier for evolution to add tools than it is to subtract them. And so, yeah, we just pile on. And so even our brain is a piler-oner. There's a lizard in there, there's monkeys in there, there's, human on top.
I'm of the ilk that says we don't know enough to make sweeping generalizations.
Well, again, so but it would be nice if you speculate about what these possibilities of these truths that would somehow break the general statement that it's not an intelligent universe, that it's made up of elements, that the elements, when combined, create new properties, and that some of these new properties are bizarre, diamonds, magnets. Some of them have strange and weird properties. And one of the weird properties of a DNA molecule is that when combined with other chemistry, it can be split in half, and it will create two new copies of itself. And if something reads those copies, it can carry a code that will basically initiate the creation of another copy.
Sweeping prescriptions for the human condition, whatever that's supposed to mean, but
yeah, whatever that's supposed to mean. Well, the human condition is what we like I said, we know this stuff. We know the human condition. We do. We know we have a psychology that's built out of these need mechanisms. Some of them are dirt crude. We need air to breathe. We need comfortable temperature. We need food to run the beastie. And then we need the sex thing that's piled on in a weird way, and then we have this social order that we have to acquire. These things we're after, this consumption, we have to acquire it in a social order because we're a gang member We're a gang machine. And so now we have this ego thing that creates this hierarchy, that creates this balance of power, and this need to for another competitive battle to take place, where the males have to do some sort of peacock thing to get the prize of replicating themselves. Yeah, we can see the games that we're playing in our psychology, and that we're structured to play a very crude game in nature, and now we have the dilemma of having this crude psychology, and yet we have to exist in a much more elegant, a much more hopefully elegant world, a much more civilized world, and that the two don't necessarily mix well.
In other words, things like scientific type of government or scientific management of society.
Yeah, social engineering, which the two words, in my opinion, fit together very nicely. Other people find it scary, but the whole idea that you would engineer society to deal with the dilemma of our psychology and create basic functional rules that make it possible for us not to step on each other and eat each other and consume each other and brutalize each other, because that's in nature what we would probably do.
Antinatalism, that kind of thing. That kind of thing says that we know enough to make some pretty major decisions on everything.
Yeah, well, it's just it's just where all the evidence points. All the evidence. Not just a little bit of the evidence, but I mean every bit of the evidence points to consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction. Points to need that doesn't need to exist. Points to replication for the sake of replication. Points to gladiator war for no real victory, just for this facade, for this fake notion of ego gratification, that whether we have 500 sharp teeth or 10 sharp teeth, whether we're 7 feet tall or 4 feet tall, all of this stupid stuff doesn't matter. The fact that we've been conformed to environmental circumstances, we're not even a very good physical beast, we're a niche beast that capitalized on like a bat. Is that perfection? Because it's molded its senses to live in an environment nothing else will live in or can live in, and it will feed in an environment where nothing else can feed in. It's a parasite on environments. We're a parasite on an environment, and so this is the grand accomplishment, and the antinatalist conclusion is simply looking at all these facts that yes, it's just a need game. You don't make the need, then you don't need to clean it up. Don't make the mess. Don't need to clean it up. But that's all we are. We create a mess by existing. We create this need problem.
Whereas I say we don't know enough, essentially, to make any major decisions on it.
Yeah. Well, see, now that's just that. As soon as you say we don't know enough to make any major decisions, is the same thing as saying you're making a decision. All right, you're just letting the status quo win. Then you're just saying nature wins. Okay, even though nature has no brain and is crude forces, we'll just do whatever it's led us to, and we won't change it. We won't modify the agenda. So that is making a decision. Not making a decision is making a decision. Deciding not to act, or not to choose to act on purpose, there still will be action. There still will be a consequence to that. You're not exempt, okay, because you decide to sit back and let it happen. That is in itself an action. Not acting is acting.
Anything. Now, that's more or less just two people groping in the dark with different assessments of the level of our ignorance. I don't really...
Yeah, well, then we're not groping in the same dark, right? If we have different assessments of ignorance, that means we have different statements about how bright the light is. And I'm saying the light's pretty bright. I'm saying it's snow-blindingly, yeah, we got quite a bit of it, a foot. Yeah, there's just no, there's all the light you need to see all that you need to see. And you're claiming it's too dark. So we're not agreeing on how dull the light is. We're not both groping.
I think that there's any way for one side or the other to prove the other one wrong.
Yeah, there's another statement you're making, right? Well, I'm saying that I think the logical proof is there. I think you can look at our evolution, the evolution of our civilization and the evolution of our knowledge, and you can see that the only thing exponentially growing now is minutia. Okay, details. We're learning lots of details, but the basic function is just being verified, not countered. With every bit of information we glean, we're going to find it more and more mechanical, more and more. There's not going to be any more. There's nothing pretty in the truth. The truth is all point to that ugly origin. There's not going to be anything redeeming. There's just going to be what I've described. A gladiator of 3.5 billion year gladiator war. That's all there's been. Many more times losers than winners. Just carnage and bloodshed to create organisms full of their ego and their sense of accomplishment that's been built into them by the molecule itself, glorifying the agenda, which is just to climb the mountain of dead bodies, stick your flag in it, and then die.
As things now stand. Having said that, we still exist in this plane of existence. We're still here. Things have to be done. I just drank a cup of coffee because without it I have trouble waking up in the morning. I've got to go to work soon. Just because you are fundamentally skeptical of things doesn't mean that you advocate just sitting there and doing nothing.
I know, but you sort of just did that, though. You sort of did just justify it a minute ago by saying you don't have enough information to make any decisions, and then you're saying, but you're conceding the point that you have to make decisions, and that's sort of the game here. There is no place where you can just sit back and be safe. You're in the game. You're a player. You're now responsible, whether you like it or not. And you better try to make your best decision, not your best I want to evade decision. Your best decision is not going to be run away from decision. The best you can do is get in the trench, know as best you can what the right thing to do is, and then do it. But to just say that somehow standing still is going to fix the problem of the fact that things are going to happen, and you're either going to help the good things happen and stop the bad things from happening, or you're going to sit there and by abdicating, by not acting, you're likely going to just help the bad things happen. I mean, it's like not voting. Not voting is essentially voting against the good. It's like a half a vote against good.
I won't say that that's an improper lifestyle choice for someone who might want to do that. But I don't advocate that. This is certainly not a despair-inducing sort of point of view. The fact that there are limits to what we know, and we don't even know what the limits are. We can't even measure our own ignorance.
Well, again, you keep making this authoritative statement like there's some indication or some reason to believe that knowledge has some sort of infinite lid to it. And I guess what I'm saying is that I think we can see that the container isn't nearly as big as you're thinking it might be. that you're wishing it might be, that maybe you're hoping it might be. There's just no evidence that the container isn't what it is, and that's all it's going to be able to hold. You're not going to be able to pour more in. All the details in the world aren't going to fill the cup any higher. This is all there is in terms of the basic function, the basic nature of it. And it's, all the glitter and all the crap you could pile on top of it, it's like I've made the metaphor. I mean, it's tic-tac-toe. Now you can make it out of plexiglass, and you can, use all kinds of special little pieces, and maybe you can make it magnetic tic-tac-toe, but it's still tic-tac-toe, and that's what you're stuck with. And all the frou-fla you can put on top of that isn't going to change the fact that it's not a playable game by something intelligent.
That's not really the point. Essentially, the point that I'm trying to make is, I guess, an ethical one. It's the old Dundamus. Do not condemn the judgment of another because it differs from your own. You may both be wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an easily said, and it's certainly true in the religious sense, right? I mean, the more likely thing is that, it's not like one of the religions is right, it's that all of them are wrong. It's the more likely rational conclusion. But again, this idea of that all judgment is equal, that all opinions are equal, I think is a nonsense notion. There's opinions that are qualified by information and years of analysis and hard thought and trying to find a loophole in it, trying to find the weakness. And there's opinions that people just pull out of their ass or pull out of somebody else's ass and just throw them and say, here. And they have nothing, they have no logical testing. They don't mean anything. It's like when you hold up a stick of wood and say, is it conscious? I mean, it's easily done as a ploy, as a trick, and it does require some work for somebody to give you the logical proof why this piece of wood can't be conscious. But it's no better than somebody say, disprove my notion of God. Well, I can do it, but I can only do it with a logical proof, and it's going to take some time for you to understand the dynamics of the universe. All right, the physics of the world and the chemistry and the biology, and understand the context of human beings and how they make up stories and how they're very bad at rewriting stories and how stories turn into much bigger things. Fish story, little fish they catch all of a sudden becomes the whale they caught, and that this is the nature of the human being, and that's where your God came from. It's a notion in a primitive man's head, and you've totem poled it and you've turned it into something. It wasn't even, when it existed, it wasn't even what you think it is. Was it Mark Twain who supposedly said that as well? But it's an interesting thing to think. Well, all this name-droppy stuff doesn't mean much to me. I mean, it's sort of annoying almost. I'm just saying, if you're going to make the accusation that all opinions are equal, I just think that's bullshit. And so I'm making a credibility argument to you. I'm saying, here's the science. This is what the truth of science points to. It points to abiogenesis. It points to a 3.5 billion-year gladiator war. It points to no justice and fairness built in, that the only way we acquire any of that stuff is through intellectual understanding. And we hope to apply it, but we can see in our civilizations that we can't even apply the simplest of it. People still think their kids are better than other people's kids. People still think their parents are better than other people's parents. People still behave like stupid, dumb monkeys.
Think about, how do we measure our ignorance? How do we measure how much we don't know?
By how long the period of time is between major revelations, major discoveries. So I guess I'm saying that there isn't any, the gap between major is becoming huge. where and the inverse of how much new knowledge of detail do we acquire is every millisecond. So the details we're acquiring by the millisecond, the big picture truths every 100 years, and there just hasn't been any more. We're 150 years since the last big truth.
I don't think that we do have any means of measuring our own ignorance, because we don't have all the facts before us to say there's this much to be known and we know this much, therefore we're in ignorance.
Well, I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's the truth. I think we do realize that there is a function to a car, and you can describe the function fairly completely, and you don't need to know the thickness of the paint, and you don't need to know a ton of minutiae details to fairly completely describe how the combustion engine works, how the wheels work, how the transmission works, how the thing gets from here to there, and why it would even get from here to there. And I'm saying the big picture questions about what the hell we are, the car that we are, we've described its origins, how it was built, why it has the features it has, how it functions. We've gotten a lot of that stuff nailed down, and you pretending that we don't, pretending that somehow the car isn't really a car, that somehow it's something else out there, that it's going to fly away, or that it's going to grow wings, or that there's some other truth unrevealed, that there's something inside, it's a transformer, and it's going to turn into something, I think is just, unless you can bring some kind of story, some sort of speculation that somehow is rationally coherent. All the king's, fable tellers and all the king's fantasy movies and sci-fi fiction hasn't come up with it. They resort to time travel. They resort to all kinds of nonsense to try to describe a future, a possible future, and none of them have any coherency to reality. All of them end up breaking the rules to create a story worth listening to.
Oh, okay. That would be nice, but I suppose we wouldn't even need to ask that question anymore if we knew how much there was to be known. It's not really a question of debunking science. I'm not making that case at all. A lot of people seem to read into that that's what I'm trying to do, or that I'm...
Well, you're sort of insulting it, okay? You're saying that there's this much, and the science has lost, 99% of the story it's been ignorant of. It can't find it because it can't understand it. It hasn't built a big enough telescope, or a good enough microscope, or a good enough radio, magnetronic, whatever, photo-opticarizer. It has. Science has done a hell of a lot to dissect our reality, and you're just kind of dismissing it as, oh, they haven't even barely opened our eye. Well, I think they have opened our eye. I think the glasses are damn good, and you are kind of dissing it.
Trying to prove that God exists or something like that. No, I'm not. Whenever I say something, a few people have a tendency, I think, to leap a few moves ahead in what I've actually said, to assume that this is where I'm going, where I'm actually not.
Well, whatever. You are very sloppy in language, and you do overstate. Again, like I say, I think your metaphors are overstatements. I think your claims to, you prey on little bits of doubt and try to build them into some sort of monster. Your exaggerations are very manipulative. They're well crafted, but they're manipulative. They're not honest to the truth. I'm not saying you're not being honest, but I'm saying the truth proves you wrong. The evidence can demonstrate that what you're saying is a preposterous exaggeration. But who has the time? Who has the time to do that? Because a lot of these are your connivers, your little wedges, are these little easy to tear down things. It's easy to tear down science, or tear down this, or tear down that. You just say something like, look, they made the nuclear bomb and it's going to kill us. are some other little stupid thing. Are they, they're poisoning our food and poisoning our water and giving us, diseases with their antiviral treatments? Or, it's easy to do that crap. Because then somebody has to build up the whole mechanism and say, no, look at all the knowledge we've gained to all of this. So I'm just saying, but yeah, you are manipulative and you are distorting perspective, in my opinion.
I'm just saying that in terms of us as a species or as a society or as individuals or whatever, it's very useful to understand the fact that we have no way to measure our absolute level of knowledge or our...
You just said we have no... You made this absolute statement, right? You're saying we can't make absolute statements and then you make an absolute statement. You don't see the hypocrisy and duplicity of this? You're saying we don't have knowledge to make absolute statements, but you can absolutely say that somehow we are absolutely, probably, most likely not smart enough. I mean, you can't do that in the first place. You can't make absolutes when you've declared absolutes illegal. And then if you're going to do it, your absolute is completely deconstructible into something where you could say, no, we do have a great deal of knowledge about knowledge acquisition and the nature of knowledge and the fact that it isn't some sort of, description of a car can be done, description of a house can be done. Without knowing every bit of its atomic structure, you can know how it got there, how it performs, what use it has to certain individual humans. We know how houses get built, and we know how we got built. And that's a huge piece of information. It's not little, it's gigantic.
Absolute level of ignorance. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, again, you're this whole idea that ignorance could be absolute. I mean, I guess to a point, yes. Of course, if you have no knowledge, then you can make no rational labelings or choices or descriptions or anything. So, but obviously our ignorance is far less than absolute, and I would argue that the thing we are attempting to deal with is confinable. It's limited. It doesn't have scope that goes to the quanta. It doesn't have scope that goes to Alpha Centauri. It doesn't have all of that scope. It has the facts of a DNA molecule evolving on Earth. And we can see that if we weren't terrestrial beings, that we would be the smartest thing in the ocean. The smartest thing that evolved from the ocean and stayed in the ocean is an octopus or a great white shark or some beastie like that. That's the best it produced in its 3.5 billion years. We're here as a circumstance. And the fact that we can do this intelligence thing, we can have conversation and say thank you, and be pious and pompous and arrogant and all these things is a tribute to the complexity of the machine that we are. But it's not magnificent. It's just stupid, dumb luck that we have it, and it's of no value in the sense that it won't allow you to escape the fact that you're still been built to be a great white shark or an octopus. You've been built just to be this stupid mechanism that struggles for an existence so it can die, and so its genetic code, its DNA molecule, can gain some more tools in the next round, and some more tools in the next round. They're just tools. And this tool is frickin' interesting as a tool. This perception, this think into the future, plan ahead, do all this interesting stuff we're doing. Be, all kinds of bizarre ways of motivation. And you can even see it in the other mammals. Even the peacock is a perfect example. This preposterous standard for survival based on how well you've kept your feathers. Whether you've stayed out of fights. or at least won the ones you had very quickly. Done no damage, incurred no losses. But overall, we can see it's just frickin' carnage. And that's all there is here. Consumption, reproduction, cannibalism, addiction. Circular nothing. And you don't have to draw that conclusion, but I'm just saying let's not pretend we don't know that this is where all the evidence points. Because that's where all of it points. And even if you came up with a story of some other truth, I don't think you can make it rationally coherent. I don't think you can do it without resorting to gods or magic or something flat out inconsistent with the physical universe. Something that just is totally not plausible. Describe it to me. And even Star Wars was a lousy future in a way, right? I mean, you get blown up, there's empires, there's all kinds of conflict. Just goes on and on forever and ever and ever. What's the fun in that? Anyway, enough of a video. Until next time and such. We know enough. Time to use what we know.